You think you know what we're going to talk about.
But unfortunately, I fell down a damn rabbit hole and I've not gotten out yet.
Knife bros.
I literally Googled Sebastian Stan hands.
But just when you least expect it, we changed the game.
Well, yeah, because like usually in astrology, they would partner up air signs with fire signs.
All right, you can huggle.
Time travel stories, and
At the end of the day, only one thing matters. We decide.
Well, we should make it a topic. Unfortunately, I didn't take German in school. I took Spanish and I don't remember any of it.
Three Fates Decide podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Three Fates Decide. I'm your co-host Liz, and I'm here with my fellow co-hosts Mary and Sam. Say hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so in this episode, we are going to talk about Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which is the fourth book of the famous Harry Potter series by K. Rowling. It also has an accompanying film based off of the novel. So as you would imagine, this episode, there's going to be spoiler alerts. If you haven't watched the movie or read the book, I don't know why you're listening to this episode right now. But so fair warning, we are going to be discussing the film and the book. So if for some reason you have not watched or read this, then you will want to avoid this episode until you do. You have been warned. Okay, so shall we begin?
Sure. The fourth book of the series was called Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. The movie came out in 2005. Don't actually remember when the book came out. A few years before that is all I remember. Somebody find that information.
Yep. I got you.
All right. But as I said, the film came out in 2005. And a short kind of overview of what the book was about was it's set in Harry's fourth year in Hogwarts. Hogwarts is host to the legendary event, the Triwizard Tournament, which had not been done in a couple hundred years, I think.
Long time.
Something like that. It was a very, very long time since they've held this tournament. The three schools that are participating in this tournament are obviously Hogwarts. We have Beauxbatons and Durmstrang. And there will be one student from each of the schools competing in the tournament, which is what the rules are. And the students are picked by using what's known as the Goblet of Fire. And the three champions that were picked were Fleur Delacour for Beauxbatons, Victor Crumb for Durmstrang, and Cedric Diggory for Hogwarts. However, somehow Harry Potter's name gets tossed into the Goblet of Fire, and the Goblet of Fire spits his name out, therefore making him the fourth champion of the Triwizard Tournament. And the tasks are very, very dangerous. They're very, they're using magic that is more advanced than what Harry has learned. However, at the end of the book and the movie, we have the return of he who must not be named, Lord Voldemort himself.
Dun, dun, dun. So, obviously the original cast is back for the movie.
Yes.
Some additional. We have I'm gonna say like in American, but I don't think that's actually how you pronounce his name. But Ralph Fiennes. I think he pronounces it differently.
I think it's pronounced Ray Fiennes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes,
See?
it's
I
Ray
knew that.
Fiennes.
But he's Lord Voldemort.
Yes.
And then you have a young Twilight Robert Pattinson
As Cedric Diggory.
And fun fact that I just read, apparently Henry Cavill tried out for Cedric Diggory and did not get the role.
Yeah, he was too
That
old.
would have been interesting.
That would have been, but he was too old for the role.
Yeah.
Although J.K. as from what I read was J.K. Rowling wanted Cavill to play Diggory.
Oh.
Only he was
Yeah.
a little too old and too mature looking for the role,
Yeah.
which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. So this is the biggest at this point when this book came out. It was the biggest book made. It was like crazy big. I was looking up when it came out. I don't understand why I can't find it.
The book came out in 2000.
July
Okay.
July 8th,
Yeah.
2000, and
Yep.
it's 636 pages. So
There
it
we
was
go.
definitely the biggest book so far, and definitely was a turn to the dark. I don't want to say the dark side like Star Wars, but like it was dark basically.
Yes. Yes.
And they definitely showed that in the movie. So going through, I already picked out some differences between the book and the movie. I thought that this one was the first one where there was more changes, but honestly, going through a lot of these, it was nothing again like terrible.
Right.
Again, there's one book when we get there, you're gonna just hear me sighing in frustration at the amount of crap that they left out of the movie. But
And I know exactly which book and movie we're going to be talking about then, because it's the same one for me.
yep, still got a couple to go.
Yes, we do. But we will get there.
In the film, the opening scene shows the character Barty Crouch Jr. in the room along with Voldemort and Wormtail. However, he's never mentioned in the book as being there. So, nothing crazy. In the book, Harry wakes up at Privet Drive where he lives, and it's 2 weeks before September 1st, but in the film, he wakes up at the Burrow, which is where the Weasleys live. And so they cut out a complete scene of the Weasleys entering through the Dursleys' fireplace and giving Harry an invitation to the Quidditch World Cup, and George and Fred messing with Dudley, which was actually like kind of funny.
It was.
With
I really wish we had seen this.
yeah, they gave him their tongue toffee. I have to say it slow because something that's also omitted is that they were already starting their own business with like practical joke things that comes along later in a couple of books, but like it's starting to get mentioned in this one.
Yes.
With that, their older brothers, Bill and Charlie, that also went with them to the World Cup, not in the book, or not in the film, excuse me. Let's see. In the book, Harry, Hermione, and the Weasleys watched the Quidditch match from the top box along with the Malfoys and other prominent figures such as Cornelius Fudge and the Bulgarian Minister of Magic. In the film, only the Malfoys got to watch it with the Minister of Magic, and it seemed like the Weasleys, because they're quote unquote poor, were up, keeping the lights on in the place. Always gotta
Right.
make the Weasleys look bad. Rude.
They do.
Let's see. In the film, when the Death Eaters attack the Quidditch World Cup, Harry gets trampled by a panicked crowd and then knocked out, resulting in him getting separated from his friends. Never happens in the book.
Right.
That is a lie. Dobby is actually in this book. Is
Yes.
not in the movie.
No.
Along with Dobby, there is Winky and all the other house elves that work in the Hogwarts kitchen. And all of it's cut out along with Hermione's what she calls SPEW, which is the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare, because she feels that elves are treated unfairly. And it's actually a big part of the book. Not
It is.
important to the storyline, which I guess I understand why they cut it out, but huge part of the book and not in there. Poor Dobby gets deleted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Dobby. And I like Dobby.
I know, me too.
I like
He's
Dobby.
cute.
He was such
Well,
a
I
cute
mean,
boy.
he also kind of helped out in one of the tasks too, really.
Yes, I'll get to
Yeah.
that one. Yep. You
Yeah.
right. You right. Um,
Yes.
Hagrid and Professor Trelawney are both still teaching their prospective classes. None of that is in the film. So here's a big one that actually they kind of ignore altogether out of all of the rest of the books, but it kind of starts here. So Percy, who is the third brother of the Weasley family, right? So
Mhm.
in the Philosopher's Stone, he was head boy of Hogwarts House. He was the oldest at that time. He was getting ready to graduate, blah blah blah. So
Mhm.
he actually starts working for the ministry, is not mentioned, and the storyline of him betraying the family, which we'll get into, especially in like the next book and all that,
Yeah.
completely disregarded. But it all starts in this book that he starts working for the ministry and the minister, and then in the future books, he actually like betrays his family, stops talking to them, like everything, and they just completely ignore it. And actually in
Yeah.
the last book, it's a very sad part, and again, we'll get to that when he finally like kind of comes back. But yeah. So I wanted to
Mhm.
mention that because I know in the future books we'll be talking about that. But yeah, completely disregarded. Rude.
Mhm.
In the book, the Beauxbatons and Durmstrang don't arrive until Halloween. In the film, they come day one. And technically, Beauxbaton in the book are both genders, male and female. And in the movie, they appear to only be female.
Yes, because but if you look at it, they didn't really show it either, but Durmstrang was all male.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So so that was the that was the kind of like play off of, even though they're both of the schools are both, they have students of both genders. In the movies, Beauxbaton seems like it's an all girls school, while Durmstrang seems like it's an all boys school.
And here's one that's actually not on my list, but I actually just thought of it. So like I don't know if it's all the Beauxbatons or if it's Floors specifically, but like
She's half Vila, or fourth
yes.
Vila, which is something that because that was the thing. The That was one of the things where you find out about Vilas from the Quidditch
Mm-hmm.
game,
Yes.
because the Irish show the leprechauns as their mascot and the Bulgarians have the Vilas as theirs.
Right.
And unfortunately, we did not see the Vilas in the movie. And so that's why it doesn't come up with Fleur being what she's either half or fourth
I
Vila.
think yeah, she's like part Vila, and like I can
Yeah.
only compare Vilas to
Siren.
Sirens.
thank you. Glad we're all on the
Siren.
same page. Yes. So that's what I compare them to, where like they without even really like trying, they like entice you. Like, you men fall in love with them. So yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. That's yeah. So
You're,
back on my
you're
list
welcome.
here. So when Harry's name pops out of the Goblet of Fire and he goes and he walks to like the back room where everyone else is, and in the movie, Dumbledore kind of comes in and like shoves Harry into a table, like yelling at him, "Did you
Very
put your name in the
aggressively
Goblet of Fire?" That's
screaming
very
at them.
anti Dumbledore. In the book, he's actually very calmly asks him, "Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?" Which of course was no, I did not.
He's like,
Um,
okay, somebody did, and we've got to deal with it. Yeesh.
in the film, Sirius Black, who we met in the previous book slash film,
Yes.
only appears on his arranged meeting with Harry through the Flu Network when his head appears in the fireplace and it talks to Harry, which was a very weird scene. In the book, though, the trio, so Harry, Hermione, and Ron, personally visit him and Buckbeak in their cave, which is in a mountain by Hogsmeade, which is the neighboring town to Hogwarts that like the older class gets to go and like visit. And Sirius is also invited by Dumbledore into his office near the end of the book when poor Harry is in distress. And Okay.
Yes.
That's when it's revealed to Snape and Molly Weasley that he is working with Dumbledore, and while he stays in his dog form in front of the others, because if you remember, he is a doggy. So that's how he's able to stay with Harry while Harry's recovering in the hospital at the end of the movie, is staying like he's a dog.
Yes, because he's what's known as an animagus.
Animagus, yes. I want to be an animagus.
He's actually technically he's an illegal animagus.
Yes, yes. Did he went into that in the third book, or is it later on? I don't remember when they talk about him learning how to become an animagus.
I think
Isn't
they
it-
talk. I think it's this book
Is
because
it
that
this book?
yeah because towards the end we find out there's somebody else that is technically an illegal animagus.
Yes, and that's on my list too.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
you.
So, but like I said, we will get to there. I'm not going to name names just yet.
So Hagrid and Madame Maxime, Madame Maxime is in charge of the Beauxbatons. During the
I think it's Maxime. It's Karkov and Maxime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madame Maxime, during the Yule Ball, they're taking a stroll and they're talking, and in the film they cut out a huge reveal for Hagrid, and that's that he's actually half giant. And he implies that Madame Maxim, oh my God, I almost said it again. Maxime is one too. And she gets really, really angry with him because, like, that's like, you know, almost like
Right.
a diss, like, how dare you? And, like, leaves him. And that's when Harry and Ron, because they were spying, found out that Hagrid is half a giant. In the film, they completely ignore this. And as a result of that, Rita Skeeter, who's a nasty reporter, publishes an article exposing Hagrid's condition as a half giant. So he runs away and he goes into isolation in his cabin for weeks at a time. And as a result, another professor, Grubbly Plank, replaces him for his classes. None of that in the movie. Poor Hagrid. Here's Dobby again, is actually the one that gives Harry the gillyweed for the second task in the lake. And in the film, they have Neville do it. I think it was just to give Neville some camera time.
Exactly. Well, at that point, Neville was starting to have a glow up.
Yes.
In the movies, anyway. Oh my God.
Well, so I have a whole. We'll get into it after I finish this list. I'm almost done, but with the whole thing with Neville, that like annoys me. Not Neville the character itself, but like what they did with him. So.
Right.
Okay. So apparently Barty Crouch Sr. is like crazy in the book and actually like attacks Victor Crumb at one point. Not in the film. Before he dies. So not in the film. So when Harry looks in the pensieve where he like, floats down and he like drops into like a memory. In the book, there's actually 3 different events that he watches. He watches Karkaroff's plea deal, Ludo Bagman's trial, and the trial of 4 dark wizards, among which is Barty Crouch Jr., accused of torturing the Longbottoms. This is when we find out the Longbottoms are actually still alive. In the film, they only show Karkaroff's plea deal, and Karkaroff accuses Barty Crouch Jr., who is in the crowd, but that's not actually how it actually went down in the memories. They changed it to, again, ignore the poor Longbottoms and Neville.
Of course.
In the film, Cedric's last lines are, "Who are you? What do you want?" And then Wormtail, shoots him with the killing curse. In the book, Cedric didn't say anything. He got attacked by surprise. He didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Cedric. Avada Kedavra. In the book, the beams that connect between Harry and Voldemort's wands actually turn gold which they do in the very last movie, but in this one, not so much. That's actually important in the book anyway, because that's how, his parents kind of came back. The caretaker of the Riddle house came back, and then Cedric came back. Like, yeah. Barty Crouch Jr. actually dies in the book. He gets the Dementor's kiss, not even mentioned in the film. It just basically implied that he was going back to Azkaban, but he died. Dumbledore and Fudge actually have a screaming match, kind of, about Cedric Diggory's death, which they don't really get into until the next movie, but it actually starts at the end of this book where Fudge refuses to accept the fact that Voldemort has returned. So, and then on the trip back home to London, Hermione basically tells them that he found out that Rita Skeeter is a beetle animagus, and she has captured her. And then Harry and his friends end up stupefying Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, and Harry offering his tournament winnings to Fred and George for their store, which again is all omitted from the film. And that is the end of what I consider the more, specific. Obviously, there's other things, certain characters that aren't in,
Right.
but again, that's always going to be the fact. But my whole thing, and we kind of talked about it a little bit last book when we were talking about the premonition or whatever. And obviously, once we get into that in like 2 books or next book,
Yes.
whatever. Once we get into that, like, we'll go through it again. But basically, there was a choice between Neville and Harry, and Voldemort went for Harry. And in the book, Neville is still a huge part. There's so many things that they completely ignored in the books that have to do with Neville, or they ignored in the films that has to do with Neville, and it all starts with this, where they completely ignore the fact that I think Bellatrix and her husband were one of the ones that they tried in when he was in the pensive, and
Uh-huh.
About basically torturing the Longbottoms. In the films, they make it seem like the Longbottoms are dead. They're not dead. They're not. Like, I think it's the
No,
next book, like, we actually see them again.
yeah, they're in St. Mungo's.
And it's like, it's sad. Like, here Neville is actually a prominent character in the books, and they completely ignored him in these movies, except for like little things until the last movie. The last movie is when he finally gets his time to shine.
I know, and he
Annoying.
doesn't even get that much time to shine in the last movie, sadly.
Yeah. Like, it's just like, it's annoying. I'm just saying.
I know. Well, the thing of it is that Neville has been through I know they always say it was the trio, but it was really almost always a quad because Neville was almost always there.
Yeah.
In one way or another, whether he was trying to stop them from doing something or helping them do something. Neville was almost always there in the books.
Yeah.
And the fact that they damn near cut him out in the movies, I like you, Sam, that annoyed me to no end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Annoying.
I have a suspicion, but part of it has to do with the fact that at the time they were doing these movies, like she was still writing the series.
Right, so they didn't know.
So they don't necessarily know what is the significance of certain details that she included, because like a good example is like Peeves, like pretty much almost doesn't exist in the movies.
Peeves doesn't exist in the movies. What are you talking about?
I thought he cameoed.
No. Peeves is
maybe
not
I'm
in
wrong.
any of the movies.
Deleted it. They deleted all of the scenes.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. But anyway, like Peeves doesn't really exist in the movies. but cutting him out doesn't affect too much because even when he showed up in the books, he was still more like a background, bit of humor, in certain scenes in the books, but he doesn't really affect any of the plots. He's not a huge plot point that seriously mattered a lot. So them cutting him out didn't really hurt anything per se. I mean, it made possibly less funny, but doesn't really affect anything. But I think some of their cuts, didn't make much sense in the grand scheme of things because they probably weren't aware of what was significant about any of these things. Like I remember, we'll talk about it in the fifth when we get to the fifth book. But like I remember, they almost cut out Creature, thinking that like there's nothing important about Creature, or like certain scenes with that's supposed to have Creature in it. But then I think J.K. Rowling came back to them when she found out about it and made it very clear that you need to have him in it, because I think at the time they were working on the fifth movie, she was working on the seventh novel, or she was about to start on the seventh novel, and she already planned it out more or less what was going to happen in the book. So, or the sixth book or something like that. So
it's the last book. Yeah, the seventh book.
Yeah, it was the seventh book. But anyway, so she wanted them to make it very clear you have to make sure you include this character, this elf in it, because he is very important in the final two books, like especially the final book. So you can't cut out this elf and then suddenly stick him in when you do it.
Right.
know?
Right. And like, part of me like understands the difficulty of that, and like when you start a series like this, when not all the books are written, because you don't know what characters are going to show up again or like whatever. So like I completely understand that. And like, yeah, they probably didn't realize the significance of Neville in the last book.
Yeah.
But still, like she
No, I
made
know.
him a significant point in each book pretty much. Like, and you just ignore him. It's just
Yeah,
rude.
yeah. I have to agree that doesn't make much sense, because it's not like, it's like I was saying, like with Peeves as an example. He's not just like the funny character that does these goofy things, that's amusing, but doesn't really do anything to the plot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
versus Neville, who isn't just another classmate that happens to be in their classes, and he gets like one random line,
Right.
Per book or something.
Yeah.
Just to fill it out. So, yeah. So, like, I remember, like, I still remember from the book when they were doing that scene where they were learning about the unforgivable curses.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Neville, like, was so.
Right, because that's
It,
the
it
scene
was a bit of a
we
mystery.
learn.
Yeah.
We learn what happened to his parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the what is it? Cruciatus
Cruciatus
curse.
curse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was the Cruciatus curse is what it was that
Performed on his
made
parents.
performed on his parents and made him.
Yeah. It pretty much made him an orphan.
Yeah, I don't know if it matched from book to movie. I can't remember with Victor Crumb and Hermione, because I know in the book, Victor Crumb shows up again in the last book, and they didn't do that in the seventh movie. So, but Victor Crumb basically like fell for Hermione, and this is when you actually start seeing Ron Hermione like thing, tension kind of where Ron is very jealous of Victor.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of only remember in the book that the only time you were even aware that anything was going on was like when she showed up as his date for the
Mhm.
Yule Ball, but I
But
don't
then like
remember.
after they hung out, I think. I don't know. I don't remember.
I don't remember that either. Our memories are shot at this point with the
I know but no, I didn't think this movie was too off the mark with most things. Again, it's not anything that they had taken out. It didn't stop the importance of the story, which was definitely that Harry's name somehow got into the Goblet of Fire. He basically was forced into the Tri-Wizard tournament, which ended up being the Wizard tournament since there was 4 of them, but he was forced to be in the Tri-Wizard tournament. He makes it to the end. He, basically we learned that he didn't cheat, but it was cheated for him to get to the Goblet of Fire and basically bring Voldemort back to his full state. And that now, because Voldemort has part of Harry's blood, he can now physically touch him, where before Harry was protected by from the spell that, basically protected him when he was a baby because of his mom's sacrifice, so that no longer applies. That's like the main aspect of the book, and they made sure that was, taken care of, and in there everything else was just, semantics. I think nothing, ruined it. I think this was like the first movie that a lot of people didn't like, and I think it's because a lot of things that they did take out people enjoyed in the book. But again, I understand this book was huge. Again, like 636 pages. That's a lot of book to put into like a 2-hour movie while still making sure that the basic plot is in there. So I get it as a, person that understands adaptations do need to change, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this was like one of those books that kind of made you wish that they had done Harry Potter the TV series instead.
Yeah. Well, right, yeah. Yeah, honestly, yeah. That would have been, well, I guess each book could have been a season. Could have done
Yeah,
7
I mean, you could have
seasons.
done like you could have done like what Game of Thrones did, which was like a 10-episode season or whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what a lot of them. I mean, The Witcher is only 8 episodes per season.
Right.
Yeah, and I
But
mean, it's gonna depend. Like, obviously, like the first
Yeah.
3 books aren't that big, so like they could do like 6 or 7 episodes or whatever. This book probably would have been like 10 to 15, depending on, how much they added. Like but yeah. So, but I honestly I didn't mind this movie. I enjoyed this book a lot,
yeah.
and
Same.
you definitely see that they're growing up. They're not little babies anymore.
Yeah, especially with that ending.
Yeah.
Isn't this the one where Hermione punches Malfoy in the nose, or is that the next book?
That was the last book.
Yeah.
Was that in the 3rd book that she punched him in the nose?
Yep.
Yes,
Damn it.
because
Yep.
he called her mudblood again.
Oh, that's right. She punched him in the nose. I like that part.
Yeah, get him.
Yeah, it was a scene like that that kind of reminds you why this girl got put in Gryffindor.
Yeah. But this is the movie where Draco gets turned into a ferret.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. He gets turned into a ferret.
He gets turned into a ferret, which obviously they showed in the movie, which was hilarious.
But in the book, Draco actually attacked Harry, where in the
Yes.
movie it was before he could get to Harry. So
Right.
yeah. So what did you guys think of book movie?
Obviously, I like the book better than the movie. I mean,
Mhm.
the movie was decent, like you said. This one, a lot of the things they cut out were things that weren't really necessary to move the plot forward. There were a few things that could have probably been added in and
Mhm.
been okay, but for the most part, it was pretty close adaptation from book to movie. So I wasn't too unhappy with it.
I have to admit, there was one scene from the movie that I thought was really odd. Well, you didn't really talk about this in the list earlier of like the differences, but one scene that I thought was really, well, it could just be a me thing, but like I thought it was really weird when they were doing the first task and then Harry was being chased by the dragon all over the place, like all over Hogwarts, which totally did not happen in the book. Like, I mean, I get it for the movie. It makes it more exciting visually, having Harry being chased around by a dragon. But it's like, aside from the fact that it's not in the book, the thing is that there are details about it that doesn't make any sense to me, at least. Like, for one thing, how is it's like you have a huge dragon and you're telling me that you're using chains on it that can be broken that easily. You would think that they would have used like the strongest magical chains they could possibly get on this thing to make sure that it doesn't do what it did in the movie.
Yeah,
And
it
yet,
literally like there was no struggle. That thing was just like
right, it's like it
broken.
may as well be made of paper mache at that point. So it's like,
But
I don't get that.
you want to know what I liked is everyone's just like sitting in the stadium waiting. Like, okay, is he gonna come back? Like Harry could have been dead. Like,
Exactly.
whatever. And they're all just like do 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 do.
That was and another aspect of that scene that was like kind of like puzzling to me is that okay, um so they were intentionally using nesting mothers because the whole point was you're trying to get the egg. But obviously if it's a nesting mom, the mom is going to try to protect the eggs because at that point she's not necessarily going to realize that there's an extra egg in there. She just knows that these are her eggs and this like tiny two legs is trying to get near my nest and I don't want it here, right? So the one, I mean, again, this could just be me, but I just thought it was weird, like why a dragon would bother chasing Harry as much as as much as it did, because granted, it is a dragon. It's a non-existent animal, but it's like most other animals that are like nesting sorts, like when they see a potential intruder, they will chase the intruder away, but only to a certain distance just to make sure that they are gone. But they will hurry back to the nest to make sure that there's not like a second intruder with the first one being a distraction kind of a thing. So it's like if you're supposed to be a nesting mom trying to protect your egg or whatever, then like why would you be chasing your potential intruder like so far away from your nest like that? Which I thought was like kind of bizarre to me. But again, it could just be because they wanted to make the scene more dramatic and exciting for the audience, which is it just puzzled me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. But like there's certain things and I don't know, maybe they just like, budget or what, but like in the movie, the maze, like the last thing was so boring. Where in the book they had like a sphinx and like whatever, like actually like, attacking them, and in this one it's just like it would close on you and vines would come out and get you. That was like the scariness of the maze and like, it could
I
have
know.
done
I
better.
mean, I mean, like even Hunger Games made it more
You know?
exciting to me. I mean,
Right?
they threw freaking fireballs at you.
Like, it's yeah, they could have done better. Could have done better, Warner Brothers. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, this is like your fourth movie. Don't you have more budget money now? Like, didn't the first three movies make enough money to like convince you to put a little bit more into this one? I mean, come on, you know?
but I have to say, how heartbreaking was it when Cedric Diggory's father was like screaming at the end, like, "That's my son," and like was like howling. Like I cried so hard.
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, that was, terrible and oh so realistic, because, it's like you're only, I mean, not that like having, 10 kids or anything would make it less painful, but, it's like this is like your only kid
He's gone.
and he's gone. It's like
Yep.
it's only you and your spouse to, you know, console together. I mean, but like I said, even if you had 10 kids, losing one kid is equally horrible. It's just that, now you only have your spouse to grieve with.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we close out, as usual, we have an email address where you can send us questions, comments, criticisms on how to improve our show. You can email us at threefatesdecide@gmail.com. It's the title of our podcast, all in one word, and the 3 is spelt out.
And you can also reach us on Instagram at Three Fates Decide. The 3 is spelled out. And feel free to send us DMs.
Let us know what you think. We love feedback.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Catch us next time.
And see what we're going to talk about.
Because the 3 Fates decide.